Hello and welcome to the Voice of Iron, and in this session, we'll be reading and ranting about the Wolfhound light Battlemech. First, I'll read a little bit about the lore that we're aware of through SARNA, and then afterwards, I'll be talking a little bit about my own personal thoughts and experiences with the Wolfhound. Description: a light, rugged, and dependable design, the Wolfhound made its first appearance in 3028. Following the success of the Hatchetman design in partnership with the Federated Sons, Archon Katrina Steiner ordered Thar-Hess Industries to produce a battlemech to address a persistent problem of the Lyran Commonwealth Armed Forces, hunting down and destroying the Panther and Jenner, swift, lightweight mechs of the Draconis Combine, which had embarrassed the LCAF one too many times. The final design was a light mech with an all-energy weapons payload, effective at a variety of combat ranges. The maximum amount of armor for a mech of its weight class, and the use of mostly standard components to keep costs down. Due to their fierce loyalty to House Steiner, the Kellhounds were the first unit chosen to field test the Wolfhound in combat, followed shortly thereafter by Wolf's Dragoons. The design received its baptism of fire during the Fourth Succession War, where it exceeded all expectations and performed brilliantly. This was especially true when the Wolfhound faced its intended targets, hitting the Jenner beyond its ability to return fire, while closing the distance on the Panther to get within the minimum range of its primary weapon. With the successful end of the war, the Federated Commonwealth ordered larger numbers of Wolfhounds to outfit its military, and the design was used again during the War of 3039. Wolfhounds suffered far fewer casualties than other mechs during that conflict, and as such, a mere handful fell into the hands of the Combine. While impressed with the mech, the Caretans were too prideful to copy it themselves, instead using captured examples to help develop the Wolf Trap, specifically to counter the mech. Eventually, Ark Royal Mechworks was brought in to produce Wolfhounds under license from Thar-Hess, and the recovery of Lost Tech, thanks to the Helm Memory Core, allowed for a more advanced variant to be produced to combat the clan invasion. Unfortunately, the necessary retooling of Thar-Hess's factories to produce the WLF-2 model, introduced in 3052, took too long before Comstar brought an end to the invasion with the Battle of Turkaid. These newer Wolfhounds continued to be produced for both FedCom member states, although following the formal creation of the Lyran Alliance, the Thar-Hess factories began producing the newer WLF-3S model. This new variant was shipped only to units loyal to the Lyran state, and thus fought on the side of Catherine Steiner-Davian during the FedCom Civil War. During the Jihad, the Word of Blake launched a devastating assault on Tharkad, effectively shutting down Thar-Hess's Wolfhound factory line. In response, Ark Royal increased production and introduced the WLF-4 model to replace the losses suffered by Allied forces fighting the Blakists. Weapons and equipment. As a laser boat, the Wolfhound's very basic weapons array frees it from supply lines, and allows for superior endurance during extended campaigns. The primary long-range weapon is a Cyclops 12 ER large laser mounted in the right arm, which allows the Wolfhound to strike at ranges of nearly 600 meters. As secondary weapons for close combat, the Wolfhound is armed with 4 Defiance B3M medium lasers, 3 of which are split between the right, center, and left torso, while the 4th is mounted in the center rear in case any mech tries to exploit its traditional blind spot. 10 double heat sinks allow for superior heat management, while 7.5 tons of armor provide excellent protection. While the majority of the components used in the Wolfhound are Lyran in origin, the use of a full head ejection system required the help of the Federated Sons. Countless mech warrior lives have been saved thanks to this system's ability to operate in traditionally hostile environments. Variants. The WLF-1. The original Wolfhound model, produced on Tharkad from 3028 until the introduction of the WLF-2 variant. The pre-helm memory core, WLF-1's primary weapon, is a standard Satanta large laser, making its striking distance shorter than that of the later model, while its 10 single heat sinks did not dissipate as much waste heat as the newer double heat sinks used on the WLF-2. The WLF-1A. A common field refit employed by some mech warriors, this model simply removes the rear-mounted medium laser and adds an extra single heatsink. The WLF-1B. Another common field refit, this model repositions the rear-firing medium laser to face forward. The WLF-2H. The production model of the WLF-2X, introduced in 3082, to ease production, the actuator enhancement system has been removed and replaced by an extra double heatsink, and the laser reflective armor has been replaced by the standard armor available anywhere in the inner sphere. The heavy PPC retains its PPC capacitor, and the XL engine retains the supercharger that allows for impressive speed boosts. A pair of ER medium lasers and an ER small laser round out the weapons. The WLF-2X. Developed by Ark Royal Mechworks' Michael Bodian in the midst of the Jihad, the extensively modified WLF-2X variant utilizes experimental technology. Using an endosteel chassis and an extra light engine to save weight, the 2X's main weapon is a right arm mounted heavy PPC, enhanced by both a PPC capacitor and an actuator enhancement system. The torso mounted weapons remain lasers, specifically 2 ER medium lasers and a single ER small laser, while 10 double heatsinks allow it to keep their increased thermal output in check. Enhanced defensive protection comes in the form of supercharger enhanced speed and cosmetically styled laser reflective armor. The WLF-3M. A post-Jihad refit of the WLF-3S in use among the states of the former Free Worlds League, the 3M removes 2 double heatsinks and 1/2 ton of armor to replace the ER PPC, ER medium lasers, and ER small laser with a right arm mounted light Gauss rifle with a single ton of reloads. The WLF-3S. The 3S variant, introduced in 3064, sacrifices some of the mech's durability for an increase in firepower. The mech is powered by a light fusion engine, which frees up space on the chassis for new equipment. The ER large laser has been removed and replaced with an ER PPC, extending its range even further, while the medium lasers have been replaced with 3 forward-facing ER medium lasers and a rear-facing ER small laser. Finally, the chassis is now built using endo steel, and the mech has 2 additional double heatsinks to help handle the much heavier heat burden. The WLF-4W. The 4W is based on the WLF-2 model and is intended as a mid-range harasser. Introduced by Ark Royal Mechworks in 3069, the 4W has an endo-steel chassis and carries 3 light PPCs mounted in the torsos, as well as an ER medium laser and an ER small laser in the right arm. The WLF-4WA. An electronic warfare variant of the WLF-4W model, introduced in 3071, the 4WA retains the trio of torso-mounted Fusigon long-tooth light PPCs, but exchanges the arm-mounted lasers for a Guardian ECM suite. The WLF-5. A post-Jihad variant produced on Ark Royal alongside the WLF-4W in 3079, the WLF-5 is built on an endo steel frame and is powered by the larger 245 rated XL engine to increase its ground speed by 20 km per hour, capable of almost 150 km per hour in short bursts due to the inclusion of MASK. Replacing the armament of lasers with an array of PPCs, a right arm-mounted houndstooth snub-nose PPC is supported by a pair of torso-mounted Defiance 1002 light PPCs. The WLF-6S. A Dark Age variant, this Wolfhound carries an ER medium laser in each torso, while the center torso carries a small X-pulse laser to cover the rear. The right arm is equipped with an actuator enhancement system to steady the large re-engineered laser that provides the bulk of the firepower. An XL engine is fitted and allows the Wolfhound to reach a top speed of 111 km per hour. An endosteel chassis and light ferrofibrous armor are fitted as well. And finally, an unnamed Lyran variant was also produced for the Lyran Alliance in the late days of the FedCom Civil War. This variant used a light engine and carried an ER large laser and 4 ER medium lasers. However, at this time, there is no known record sheet for this observed variant. The Wolfhound also came with a couple of design quirks. It was easy to maintain and had a very good reputation. The only other variant with significant design quirks was the 2H, which unfortunately had a couple of cooling system flaws. And now, personal notes. Those of you who've listened to my channel long enough probably know exactly what I'm gonna say at the beginning of this. My first game for MechWarrior was MechWarrior 4 Mercenaries. That was my first introduction to the Battletech universe, and there are a couple of paths you can pick in the beginning where your starter mech, or one of your starter mechs, is the Wolfhound. So as such, I ended up piloting this thing very, very early on in my career. It was likely one of, if not the first mechs that I ever actually sat down in and controlled. And of course, as time has gone on, I have only gotten more familiar with it in both positive and negative regard. I played it on the tabletop many a time. I've played it in MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries as well. And I even played it on MechWarrior Online for a little while, back when I played that. And it is, as with many mechs that I conclude, it is a fun mech, but more specifically, I very much like it for the fact that it gives you kind of carte blanche to be reckless. And I don't mean reckless in the sense of like, oh, I'm gonna die anyway, like you can in something like, say, a Flea, but reckless in the sense of you don't have to land every shot. Since you don't have ammunition, there's no worry about that. It's durable for a light mech, so especially if you're charging other light mechs, you don't really have to worry about, dying first. And if you're going up against heavier mechs, you can actually take a couple hits, although you still want to be cautious. But the large laser and the medium lasers, if you're running around the battlefield, you've got enough speed to matter, enough armor to matter, and, again, no ammunition means no worry about an ammo cook-off or explosion, and at the same time, it means that you can just fire as often as you have the heat for it. Therein lies the catch. As long as you have the heat for it, because this thing will overheat. Well, at least the way I always tend to pilot it tends to always overheat. Technically not a design flaw that's commonly noted, because most pilots tend to have discipline, but when I can fire as much as I want without worrying about ammunition, I'm gonna fire as much as I want without worrying about ammunition. Now, I know how to cycle heat, but nonetheless, the Wolfhound is a great mech to just run out there and have fun with. If you are a new pilot, this is a very, very friendly mech. Not just on the tabletop where, hey, you get to run out there and do what you need to do, but of course in the video games. It gives you that real first-person shooter, I don't even worry about your ammunition, run around. It's maneuverable enough, and it's tough enough to where you can actually do something, even if you aren't too familiar yet. It doesn't require much strategy to play this well, and yet there's room for strategy. You can very effectively outflank your enemies, and especially if you can snipe someone in the back armor with this large laser while you're coming up behind, or if you can outflank hard without getting detected and then just alpha strike directly into somebody's back armor, especially a light or a medium mech, you can do some serious damage with this thing. So you've got a lot of options, and you don't have to be a master strategist in order to have fun and genuinely do well with this mech. Now, I usually, of course, talk at this point about custom variants. It's such a good mech as it is, to where the edits I usually make to this thing are minimal, and it is probably exactly what you think I would do to it. I tend to strip out a medium laser or two and cram this thing full of double heat sinks as often as I can. Or if double heat sinks aren't available, just as many heat sinks as I can, reasonably. Although, by the time you get the WLF2, double heat sinks exist. It's just more scarcity at that point. MechWarrior 5 logic, am I right? But all that to say, I cram this thing full of heat sinks so that I can afford to be even more reckless with it. That usually comes at the expense of firepower. I could strip armor instead, but usually I prefer, less firepower if it means I get to fire more often. It's just kind of the way that I roll. But again, not a radical design change. I'm not out here trying to, shove missiles into this thing. It's still a laser boat. It's still an energy monster. I know friends of mine who tend to like the PPC variant of this thing, basically turning it into a Lyran Panther. Nothing wrong with that. It's pretty good. But all in all, I like to keep it a laser boat, and I have quite a bit of fun doing it. So if you've never piloted a Wolfhound before, first off, I'm not sure how you haven't piloted one before. Once you get past a certain era, they're not that hard to get your hands on. But it is a lot of fun. I highly recommend it. I think I end up saying that for almost all the mechs I've gone over, but I just really love the mechs in these games. Anyway, but yes, I highly recommend giving it a shot. Just run buck wild in the middle of a battle, especially if it's like an arena match where it's a free-for-all, or if you're going up against another light lance. You have the flexibility to do that. Go wild, have some fun with it. This is a fantastic machine for that. Anyway, that concludes today's reading, and thank you for listening to my voice.